Hello, Serge here from the backyard driving range. Well, we have a question that came into customer service, and this one goes, "Hi Serge, I just viewed your video on hitting the ground behind the ball. I have found that the best solution to this problem is to make sure to address the ball with the head of the club just above the ball. If you place the club on the ground, doesn't it tend to want to return to the spot from which the swing originated? I find this especially beneficial on short chips, but I believe it helps with all clubs. Thanks for your wonderful golf instruction, Bill Frazier." Okay, Bill, I think this is a situation of that something that maybe you tried and it seemed to work for whatever reason at some moment in time, but I think you answered your question with a statement that you made after you asked the question. And I think when I read this again, you're going to find out where my answer is going to be. It says, "I have found that the best solution to this problem is to make sure to address the ball with the head of the club just above the ball." Okay, so what does that mean? Here's the ball. Now, are you addressing it with the head above the ball here, or with the club behind the ball, but above the head? All right. So that statement leaves us open to where you're actually addressing the ball. But either way, you're talking about addressing the ball with the club up in the air. All right. Then you go on to say, if you place the club on the ground, doesn't it tend to want to return to the spot from which the swing originated? Okay, so and that's what I mean by you answered your question. If it tends to return to the point behind the ball on the ground where you address it, if the club was on the ground, would it not be the same that it's going to return to this point above the ball, whether it's the club's above it or to the back of it or wherever it is, you start it up in the air, it's going to return to that point? And the answer is yes. Why? Because the number one, but probably one of the most important parts of setup is that you are setting your spine angle, which means you're setting the distance of your arm length to the ball so that when your arms straighten back up to impact, that they will be returned to where you started without having to make a spine angle adjustment. All right? So, and if you go back and you look at any videos I've done on a driver, I very likely talk about the fact that when I tee the ball high, for example, let me get the driver out and go ahead and tee one up here. And I'm going to take a high tee. Say I'm teeing it high. I think you'll go through the videos and you'll find that I've stated very much that when I tee up a ball high, when I'm standing here to tee it, I address the club at the ball. Because if I addressed it here, look at how, again, if I'm going to do this from the side, and I think y'all can see it, if I'm like this, and look at my spine angle, to hit the golf ball, I'd have to come back and adjust my spine angle to come up and hit it on the tee. You with me? Again, here's my spine angle. Where would I have to be to hit the ball? I'd have to come up to about there. It's not much, but that's enough to make the difference between hitting it thin or hitting it high in the club face. And when you adjusted your spine angle, you as you came up, you moved away from the ball, or as you go down, you moved forward into the ball. You could hit it on the toe if you're moving away, and hit it towards the heel if you're coming back. So the answer to your question is you have to start the ball. You have to address the club at the ball for basically where you want to hit it, because it sets your spine angle, which means once you keep your level knees throughout the swing, whether you got a driver or you're all the way back to the irons here, and the ball's on the ground, and I'll leave that tee up in the air here. So if the ball is on the ground, say right here, and I adjust it up in the air, I'm going to have to make a spine angle adjustment down. Down's the worst one, because why? Down's gravity's going to pull you down and collapse you more. So we're standing here trying to make a good swing, keep the wide knees, outward pressure, keep the knees level, and return the swing back, which means if we keep these angles level, that angle level relative to the ground, and whatever I put my spine at, if I'm starting in the wrong place as relative to the ball where I want it to be struck, and on the path and the angle I want it to be struck, the angle of attack, then I'm going to have to make it in swing spine adjustment, which might involve the knees and everything else that you come up. But even just the spine alone keeping the knees is still going to have a problem, especially if you're high going down, because gravity is going to want to pull you down even more, which will slightly bring you down and collapse you. And so where do most people end up hitting a lot of chunks? Because they get in doing too much with the knees. So you can still keep the knees, but we can't forget the spine, because remember, we're swinging like a rock on a string here. This is the rock, this is the string, it's connected here. We swing around, the center of the swing is at the top of your spine, at the nape of your neck. So we swing here. So if I start up here and I make a good swing up here, I'm going to swing back and I'm going to miss that ball. So if I want to hit that ball, I have to come in here and start here, so I can come back and return the club at the ball, where I keep my knees quiet, and my spine stays in the same angle it started from. Centrifugal force will pull my arms back down to where they're supposed to be. So I think this is a very simple equation here. I mean, if we're after fewer angles, the better, then we have to start at the correct angle. So now again, if you're starting with the club way back here behind the ball, that's one thing. That's why I believe more than anything, we start the club directly at as close to the ball as we can. So you got to be careful when you're waggling that you don't bump the ball, because if you're playing the ball down and you bump the ball and it moves a little, you've just caused it to move, and that's a stroke. All right, so you have to come in here and start the club fairly close. I probably start about an inch behind it, but what the point is where am I looking? All right, I'm not looking an inch behind the ball. Remember, we want nose at the ball, not nose behind the ball. All right, like a lot of people think that's the thing to do. All right, it also kind of tells you asks you the question, where do you look at the ball? Now, I've had people say they look at the very top. Well, the vision tends to go where you're looking. All right, and the club gets to be swung where you tend to be looking. So I've had people say they look at the back of the ball, and then very many of those people either chunk it or thin it in the back. I just look at the ball, I keep my focus, I see the ground, and when I swing, I want to get from takeaway to the top to impact, and the ground or the ball never moves. Because if I'm just looking at the ball and seeing the ground in general, and the ball's in the center of my stance, that's how I know I'm looking at the ball. If you stand and you close your eyes and open them up, and the ball's not in the center of your vision field, or focal field, sometimes they call it that. But if you go like this, open your eyes up, and your eyes will look, your focus is there and the ball's over there, you know your head's cocked behind the ball. If I stand now, so if I get here and I know the ball's in the middle of my stance, I can, like I said, I can address it, close my eyes, open them up, the ball's in the center of my vision. If I start swinging and all of a sudden the ball and the ground is moving that way, barring an earthquake, that ball's not moving. So what does that mean? The only final conclusion is I'm moving. All right? And so I have to know that I got to stay still from here to there. We really believe in a peak performance golf swing that the head does not move through from takeaway to impact. And if it moves, it's just minutely. All right, and so I'm going to look here. So if I start to swing and the ground and the ball's coming closer, that means I'm going down. If I address it here and all of a sudden the ground and the ball are moving away from me, then I know I'm standing up. So the key is to make good swings, to stand here and make sure I get from takeaway to top to impact, and the ground and the ball never change in my vision, in my field of vision here. It stays exactly the same size, the same place as when I started, and that is one of the keys. So I really think it's critical to start your club where you want the ball to go, because number one, we have to maintain the vision, and number two, and I don't care which order you put these in, once you set up and you've created your angles, especially your spine angle, and what we're talking about now, you have to start where you want the club to be returned. All right, and if you do that, you hit it solid and very likely straight and longer, because when you hit it solid, you hit it straight, you hit it longer, and you'll be hitting much more better shots, hitting more fairways, greens, and shooting lower scores. So let's pay. The key is how you look at the ball, where you look at the ball, and when you set up, at the ball with all your clubs. So with woods, with a driver, if you're teeing it up high, you stand up here and the club's in the air. If the ball's on the ground, you should be starting with the club on the ground behind the ball. Now naturally, you never want to be pushing into the ground. I just basically let it, my club is just there. It's never basically resting on the ground. It's in my hands, I have my grip, and it's there, and it's going to start. And we start lifting the club up immediately. So people who push into the ground can get stuck. It's just there and you go. All right? So you want your address to be set up with the club where the ball is, so that you can return it there maintaining all the important angles, especially the knee and the spine. All right, well, that's it for the surge for today, and I'll be talking to y'all again soon.